I'm going to share what I call as my 4 ingredients in teaching and learning programming throughout the lockdown. Okay, so there are many theories out there. So basically, I would like to highlight these two paper. The first one is Theories and Framework for Online Education. This is basically just compilation of theories about online learning. But the second one is quite interesting because it talk about the differences between online learning, and the second one, two things they talk about, the differences between online learning, and second one, what they call it as emergency remote teaching, which we experienced during the COVID-19 basically lockdown. So I won't go through the theories, but I'm just going to share my experience. I hope if anyone want to chip in, you guys can chip in. If you got any questions or any what you call anything to share, you can just straight away put your basically ideas in. Right. So the ideas that I got is basically there are reasons went to these 4 ingredients. So the reason first is basically in teaching programming. In my case, I teach programming as a skill-based teaching. So in teaching programming, one of the problem that I got is basically the different set of equipments. So we have the luxury of labs in the faculty, in the school, which students can use and have a very good equipment there. But at home, they have to rely on their own PC, and sometimes their PC is not really that good to do programming and heavy kind of compiling. So this is one of the main reason which I go into later what's the solution that I'm going to propose on. The second one is the issue of coping with the new changes. So if you realize during the COVID, we start to if you remember, like we start to went home, and there's a lot of changes. We don't meet people a lot. We start to sit with a family, and there's basically the interaction with people already gone. So basically, that's where we start to basically see some problems coming in. So I'm just sharing 2 of the well-known what we call tweet and WhatsApp that have been circulating around about this what we call new way of online classes, and they have limited sources, and students start asking, is there any way we can improve this online learning? The third one is the home-based learning issues. If you realize, not everyone is blessed with a big home and what we call conducive environment at home. So in this example, this one I get it from Singapore Channel News Asia. I thought it's just the same it's just happening in Malaysia, but it's also happening in other places, like this one in Singapore, even in Singapore happening, where this particular polytechnic student have to share the room or the house, the flat, with their siblings. And you can imagine, how can you do what we call online learning or video call when you have the what we call your siblings, your younger brothers or sisters playing around and so on. And you cannot go outside to go to, for example, coffee shop or anywhere, library, it's not open. And how basically they're going to learn in this kind of situation? So how I address this, basically I have this what we call 4 components in my approach. The first one is explore. The second one is an active kind of learning, a reliable platform, and asynchronous, as I said before. So in encouraging the students, basically I try to allow them to explore themselves. And I have used what we call the COVID-19 data set. So in doing so, it's basically trying to get their interest in the learning itself, because we no longer have the what we call the ability to basically ask them directly or basically to make them learn what we ask for in a class. So that one is like we give instruction rather than this one they have to explore themselves. So to do that, basically I give them the what you call the freedom to explore their own the data set. In this case, I asked them to explore COVID-19, which is of interest of everyone at the time. And the other thing is basically to give them the right trusted source. There are many sources of COVID-19 data set out there, but some of them are not trusted. So we also need to teach, or basically to share them, that it's important to get the data where it is trusted, because in the end you're going to basically play around with the right data, and you're going to produce the output based on this data, right? So in the data set, basically in teaching skills based kind of learning, uh, basically you have to make sure the input and everything that you usually put in the lab are well organized. In my case, the data is come from in a form of formatted, and it got like daily updated. This is quite important in teaching programming. So I just want to make sure they got the latest data and they can access the data in real time. So the data that I used was the data from humanitarian data set from United Nations. So this is a reliable data, and you can access them directly. So this allows the students to explore themselves rather than we feed them with a certain set of data and it's fixed and it's not dynamic enough. So that's the exploration part. The second one, I went into what we call as an active kind of approach. And in this case, uh, uh, I asked the student, previously I used what we call C++ programming, or which is a more kind of desktop-based kind of programming. Then it's come what we call Python programming. So the what you call the MCO or the lockdown itself basically has led me to seek for alternative. And in this case, I seek for teaching them with Python programming. So when I teach or change the language, basically, I start to see the differences in between the languages I use. In this case, Python gives like more simple kind of programming language, which easy for the students to understand, and it's quite quickly you can quickly integrate and implement it. And at this time, basically this time around in 2020, Python has come up as the first ranked language, or the most preferred language, or being used by anyone out there. Like in the case of data analysts, it's the top one language also. So giving them the idea of the what you call the dynamic changes of different languages, which in the end will be useful for them after they going to work. Right. The third component is the reliability of the platform. Right. So in my case, I started to use what we call Google Collaboratory as the programming platform because the reliability of the access. So the students are when they have like different type of machine at home, they don't able to basically do programming as for example as they want, and each PC has their own limitation and so on. So what Google Collaboratory gives is basically able the student able to code, compile, and collaborate between each other in a platform which is on the cloud. So when they use this, basically they no more constricted by the device or the equipment they have. So they are now relying on the processing or the speed of the computer in the cloud. Uh, this allow the users, even for example, the student even can program it on the handphone. But in my case, there's no one using handphone, which is good. So they just have to use their own laptop and access the link, Google Colab, and they can use it directly. And another advantage of Google Colab is basically they can have the output real time, and this allow the students see the output in real time and directly without having to wait for example a few hours and so on. and it has a back of a very large community which can help them explore more, and there are many options for them, for example, to seek for help. So in distance learning or in online learning like this, basically professor or lecturer is no more the main reference. So we ask them, for example, to look into alternative, and in this case the community is quite strong enough to help the students to learn and to explore themselves, and they can even ask the community about what they are doing, and can help them go through the lecture or the subject that have been taught to them. And another one is quite important, is basically to allow them to understand the open source community. So which in this case use GitHub, where they need to share their codes, and I myself share the codes which they can access to, and allow them to basically do what you call sharing, updating. This is also quite important for them after they leave the university, because most of the uh, companies use this what you call repository system. Right. So my final or my last component is basically asynchronous learning. So when the start of basically the lockdown, basically we start to think there are two ways of teaching. One is synchronous, another one is asynchronous. So when we start to do the asynchronous and synchronous kind of teaching, I realize the speed of the internet and so on. So I go for the asynchronous to allow basically learning. The student can learn either in their own time, and not basically constrained by the specific time that we ask them to do. So they manage their own environment. For example, in the morning they have to do chores for the family, and in the afternoon they can start learning, and so on. So in doing asynchronous, in the creation process, uh, I use what we call Loom in creating it. Loom is a software which is free for educations, and you just need to go to their website and you can start recording. And the good thing about Loom is you can it's just like this WebEx. You can see your screen and you can uh, view your face, which allow the students basically to see you when you recorded it, and give them a sense of a kind of face to face, even though they are not face to face kind of meeting anymore. So I use this to create all of my videos, and giving them access to the students. Then I share the video basically on a platform, YouTube platform, to make sure that the students able to access it. So the reason I use YouTube, uh, not other platform, because the ability of YouTube to manage the connection speed. So let's say you are in rural area and your connection speed is very low, then you will get a lower kind of quality of video. And if you are in a city, you will have like a better kind of speed, then the video quality will be higher. And this allow the students to be able to access the same content in different kind of what we call uh, video quality, but everyone can access this and can basically understand what, or can access the content that I want to share. Right? And of course, finally, basically, the platform that I use to share all this information, I use uh, the LMS of the UTM e-learning. So here I share all the files and all the assignments and all the what you call uh, basically video and so on. So here where I contain all these basically data, and basically do the evaluation and so on. Right. So I think that's my sharing for today, and uh, I call this as explore, active, reliable, and asynchronous. So these are the four approach, which is the key component. And if you go back to the article I shared earlier, and the idea is in emergency remote teaching is to allow the students basically to learn and in the same time to explore by themselves. So it's kind of a blended learning flipped classroom where we ask everything the students do and we just monitor it. But you cannot compare it directly to the normal online learning, because this is sort of a thing that we do in replacing the real lab kind of environment. So, and in exploration, I use COVID-19 datasets for the availability for of interest of everyone, so students can explore, and to make sure they are active in teaching in the learning process, I use Python programming, which is easy to learn. And for readability, I use Google Collaboratory as a programming platform. And for the asynchronous learning, I use YouTube for them to learn and basically to disseminate the information. So this is a quick sharing. So I hope if you guys have any kind of basically feedbacks or any kind of sharing you guys also want to share, you can share. And my conclusion is there is no instant silver bullet or one-to-one solution for all in moving from face-to-face lectures to online learning in the new norm, teaching and learning. And my solution emphasizes on technologies that are available and accessible to everyone. So that's the basically the key reason why I choose this platform from YouTube, Loom, then Google Collaboratory, and COVID-19 datasets. So these are all accessible and easy for the users to or the students to access on. Right. So that's it for my sharing.